All right, hey, I'm here with Bucky out for a night stroll, an evening stroll. Come on, Pop. Just heading around the neighborhood, trying to get him a little walk before it gets too dark. Been cooped up inside all day. Anyway, it's Labor Day, just resting, recharging for the rest of the week. And I was just thinking about something, as I was kind of just surfing around the internet and actually was looking for something for a movie for the wife and I to watch. And just we don't watch a lot of movies. We don't have a ton of free time to just lounge around. But when we do, I try to find movies that are family friendly, wholesome oriented. Things that you can draw a little bit of an encouragement from. And so I'm looking around. But one thing I noticed was there's just a ton of movies that are just reboots of movies that have been made before. Seems to be an ever increasing trend. And so I see all these movies that are just reboots of movies that have already been made. And it kind of got me thinking that, life is the same way. Life is very similar. If you think about it, I was just thinking about my own life, and how there's always like these series of reboots, in life. And, I was thinking, that how it's not necessarily a bad thing, Sometimes these reboots happen and they can actually be good, better than the original. I think I actually had seen the latest Dune movie, which was a reboot and a remake of, the original Dune movie that came out, I think in 1984, right around that. So I remember seeing it when it came out, just like didn't understand it at all. Kind of slow, confusing. And so they rebooted it, and it turns out that it was better than the original. Stayed truer to the book, apparently, and was just a lot more entertaining all the way around. And so it kind of got me thinking about life and how, our lives are similar. And for us, when we reboot in life, most of the times it's after what we would consider something that failed, a failure of some sort, and the thing about it is, like, reboots in life, starting over in life, isn't necessarily a failure. It doesn't mean that we failed. In fact, a lot of the times we're able to restart now with a much better understanding of the things that we might have been going through. Maybe that led to a failure, say a failure in a relationship, a loss of a job, say a misinvestment financially. The only time I think we're ever totally failures is when we refuse to learn from those mistakes. And so I choose to look at things, some of the decisions that I've made that were less than stellar, as an opportunity to reboot that and start over and do it better this next time, and and actually succeed now with a bit of a frame of reference for the things that I might be pursuing or going through, the challenges and struggles in life, getting a firmer grip and a better perspective on where you're at. And so, hey, sometimes it's not bad to do a little reboot every once in a while. I had, gotten rid of a computer a while back, and, before I gave it away, I wiped the memory. That way, the person who was receiving it could move forward, with a fresh start, so to speak, on that computer. And I think it's the same way, with us and with things in life. How you doing? It's really, a reboot for us, a reboot in life is an opportunity to wipe clean the slate, of the past, and have a fresh start with your perspective, with your way of thinking, especially even with your actions, of course. So every reboot is going to require letting go of old ways, old mindsets, old habits, old ways of doing things and processes that weren't yielding the results that you desired. As a business owner, in fact, we just walked by the entrance door to our shop. As a business owner, I could tell you there's been things that we had to learn and then implement. And so not only did we have to reboot at times the way we were doing things, we also had to kind of just reboot our thinking, reset our thinking, and actually implement certain things that maybe we've been fighting for a long time. Safety protocols and checklists and those kinds of things that we kind of just shot from the hip for a lot of years because we're a small business. But once we grew in our thinking and we kind of had to come to that spot of humility and say, man, you know what, we need to really tighten up and just get better on our procedures, better on our processes. Man, we were able to reset and see a real just change in just our productivity throughout the day. And so to do a proper reboot or a reset in our life, it's always going to require changing the way you think, getting rid of old thinking, embracing new thoughts and ideas. Come on, Pop. And then, and here's the other thing too, is after a good reboot, a reset in life, here's the thing is you're not starting back at zero, Now we're starting with, like I said a little bit earlier, like a frame of reference. We've got experience on our side. We've got some trial and error on our side. And so this is the thing is I think that's the most encouraging about, kind of reevaluating yourself and resetting is now we can do it with an understanding that we just didn't previously have before. And we don't have to see those reboots or resets as a failure, but as an opportunity, once again, to start from a better footing. What happens now is that we're able to optimize what we've learned, and so rebooting is usually comes at a spot, or restarting comes at a spot after we've already learned the hard lessons. We've begun to standardize things in our lives, and now we can optimize during the reboot session. You know what I mean? And we're not starting back from zero. And so, hey, it's just some quick thoughts on, on life and the ins and outs of life and how we can, be better tomorrow than we were today or yesterday. And that's embracing the life of a fresh start, a new start, It's available every day. Possibility, tell you what, is the one thing that we all have in spades. Anything is possible to him that would believe. And so, hey, embrace the reboot, the restart. Maybe there's something today that you personally need to give a fresh take on, fresh look at, now with some experience, some wisdom, and say, hey, let me start this thing again. So until next time, Roy here, and Kim, and Bucky. Kim's not in the video today, but she sends her regards. We're here in real life. We'll catch you next time. Get up. Get a pup. Get a pup. Puppy. Get a puppy. Get a puppy. Get a pup. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Good boy. It's a good baby.